bandsaw. This is how it comes in 2 cartons. Looks like it's pretty well protected. And there's warnings not to tip it or bang it around. Instructions came not attached. Not sure where that was originally, but anyway, now the next trick is getting it downstairs. Hear the dog? He's excited too. It's here. Oops, I gotta look at the camera. It's here. My Grizzly 14-inch bandsaw has arrived. It was on back order since Christmas or something. And I got my friend Tony here to help me get it downstairs. My long-awaited toy has finally arrived. This is the Grizzly G0555XH Extreme Series bandsaw, 14-inch, 1.75 horsepower. Comes in this wooden crate, and package number 2 is the stand that it goes on. The combined weight of these, the shipping weight, is 325 pounds. That's why I needed help getting it down into the basement, but now it's home. And this is what I'm replacing. This benchtop free Ryobi. Good riddance, Ryobi. I hate you. So let's get to the unboxing. See, I'm wearing my Grizzly shirt from Yellowstone. Okay, let's see what's in here. These are the 2 boxes that were wrapped up with the saw. Oh yeah, this is the table, cast iron table. And that's got that packing grease or whatever it is on it, so that's gonna need some cleanup. Okay. And then this. Are part of our fence system. This is the resaw fence. And then some cranks and hardware. And this is also part of the fence system, the indicator line for measurements. It bolts on somewhere. Okay. We'll get to those when that time comes. I've not yet found instructions. This is what came laying on top of the crate. It was not attached with tape or anything. It was just loosely laid on top of the crate. This is a owner's manual for a shaper. And this is obviously not a shaper. This manual is not even for a Grizzly, it's for a shop fox. I'm hoping there's an owner's manual for the saw in the second box, which is the base for the saw, so it doesn't seem likely, although they are cartons 1 of 2 and 2 of 2, so it's possible. I'll open it up next and see. Fingers crossed, but it seems likely that I'm gonna have to go online and find the owner's manual there, which kind of sucks. Okay, let's see what's in here. More boxes. Okay, I have to get this on its side to open up. It's kind of heavy. Opens in the back. Please let there be a manual in here. Oh ho ho! Thank you, Lord. Okay, I was getting concerned there. And this is miter gauge. What else? Bolts and knobs and things. More hardware. More hardware. Okay, good. This is how it arrives in the shipping crate. Everything's pretty much installed except for the table and the fence system. The blade is installed, and I'm assuming tuned to be in the right place, and the exposed blade is protected. I also got this mobile base from Grizzly that was a separate purchase because this is a small shop and everything needs to be on wheels. So I think I'm going to put this together first and then get it on the stand, and then we'll get the saw onto the stand. Sound like a plan? I'm just installing these feet. I wouldn't even really need these feet, except for they're rubber, so they're going to absorb some vibration. So that's the main reason I'm putting them on, and they'll keep it from sliding around a little bit, being metal on metal. But really the base sits in the rolling cart pretty nicely. So I took the nut and washer and put it all the way down on all of these. So I'm just going to add the washer and the nut on the back side. These are adjustable feet. You can adjust them for getting it level, but once this base is in the cart and once the saw is on the base, I'm not going to be able to adjust these inside the cart frame. So really they're just here for vibration absorption. And then I can flip this over onto the cart. I think this saw weighs something like 250 pounds. So it is a two-person job to lift it onto the cart. So now I gotta find somebody to help me lift it onto the base. The next step is to remove this rust inhibitor that it comes packaged in. This bare cast iron will rust really fast if it's exposed to any moisture. When I get this rust preventative cleaned off, there's several products that can accomplish that task. A lot of people use WD-40. Some people use low odor mineral spirits. Naphtha is another choice, or kerosene, and there's probably other citrus degreasers that would work too. I even thought about using my grill cleaner, but I've decided to go with a first step of WD-40. I'm just going to spray it on and let it soak in, and then scrape off any gunk, and then wipe it clean with naphtha. So let's get this tabletop clean. This is just a laminate floor sample that I got from the big box store. They work great for scrapers or for spreading silicone, stuff like that. And since they're free, totally disposable. You want to make sure you're doing a nice thorough job of cleaning this. It's my most expensive tool so far, so I want to take good care of it. And by the way, this is much easier to do before you put it on the saw. I don't know why people put it on the saw and then clean it. Makes no sense to me. Now that I'm getting a good look at the bottom side, I can see that it looks like powder coating has gotten into the threaded bolt holes on the bottom here. That could have become a problem if I didn't notice that. So I'm just gonna try to get that out of there. That actually came out pretty easy. Be careful if you have sweaty hands, you can get this rusty and have a nice rusty fingerprint. Now that it's clean and dry, we want to make sure we protect it right away. So to do that, I'm going to use this Shield T9 spray. Spray that on, wipe it off, and then I'm going to apply a layer of Renaissance paste wax. This is a furniture polish wax. A lot of people use Johnson's paste wax. That works just fine. I saw this recommended on the Wood Whisperer, so I got some and I use it on my tools. put a link for both of these in the description. Spray on and allow to dry. It went on kind of heavy, so I'm just going to wipe off the excess. Now I'm going to allow that to dry while I do some other things. Now I'm going to put a thin coat of this Renaissance furniture wax on the cast iron table. I'm just going to warm it up with the heat gun to make it a little easier to apply. This is a rag I just keep together with this wax. Just swirl it in there on all the cast iron bare surfaces. And I'm going to hit this whole thing with the heat gun. Then I'm going to buff it off so it's nice and slippery. Off camera, I converted the power plug to a 220 volt and ran new wiring for a 220 outlet into this wall. The saw comes pre-wired from the factory for 110, and the owner's manual has diagrams and instructions for converting to 220. It's not too terribly difficult if you're feeling the urge. I'm still waiting for a new cover plate for the outlet, which had to be special ordered. But enough about that. Now let's get on to the saw assembly. When I was doing the research and looking for the saw that I wanted, I saw on the Grizzly site that this thrust bearing was actually oriented perpendicular to the blade, both upper and lower. And I thought that was a odd design. It's not that uncommon, but it makes more sense for the thrust bearing to roll with the blade rather than sideways to it. So I actually got an upgrade from Carter Products, a new guide system, upper and lower, and then the blade guard. And this is how it comes packaged. So obviously this is what it came with from Grizzly. Well, where's this supposed to go? That goes on there. So it needs to mount to this post, but there's not enough post and it's square. It's only round here and it only fits, the round part only fits inside this. It won't go through this and that. This barely attaches with by itself. And this isn't long enough. No! So after a bunch of monkeying around with the new Carter blade guides, trying to get those lined up and installed, I discovered that they're not going to work. The blade guard that keeps me from getting cut up here when I'm focusing on work down here, it's not going to be long enough and it's not going to adjust with the full depth of cut on this resaw setup. And unfortunately, I bought this Carter blade guide set months before I actually was able to get the saw set up. So now I don't know if I'll even take it back. And this Carter set was 200 bucks. Ouch. So I'm hoping and praying that they'll take it back and understand my situation. We'll see. So now I got to put the Grizzly blade guides back on, which is actually kind of okay because I think I might like the blade guides that came with the Grizzly better. They have better adjustability, so I'll show you details on that in just a sec. Now I've got the original blade guides put back on, and now I'm going to put the table on the saw. First thing we need to do is remove this blade guard, and then also make sure that the blade is untensioned, which it is. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that blade guard. That's just a couple bolts. Loosen those up a bit. And that just slides off. Next step is to loosen this nut and remove this bolt from the table gap. And remove the table insert. Okay, what I'm looking at underneath is to make sure that the trunnion bolts went through their saddle. You gotta get both of them at the same time. There we go. Okay, I just did this backwards. The gap is supposed to be on this side. Okay, no biggie. This is my first time doing this. There, that makes more sense. Let me show you underneath what I was aiming for. These are the trunnions and they come pre-installed with these bolts in them. The bolts have to go through the trunnion base. And then we add these star knobs to keep them in place. Well, that's easier said than done. It'll hold them down so they don't travel up. Now we got a bunch of dialing in to do with the blade guides. Let's see if I can get a better angle on that. This is what I was talking about with the easier adjustability. This Grizzly blade guide set has thumb screws and knurled knobs to make adjustments, front and back. And for the thrust guide, there we go. Whereas the Carter set was all Allen wrenches, which if you've done any work with Allen wrenches, you know they're kind of a pain in the butt. So this is a lot handier to have a toolless system that's not going to fall out of your hand when you're making adjustments. So now we want the blade gullet to be just in front of this bottom blade guide. Oh, actually, before we do this, we have to tension the blade. Don't forget that. Alright, now I got the blade tensioned. Now we can make adjustments. We're getting our bearings just behind the blade gullet. We don't want the teeth of the blade touching these blade guides because they'll wear out unevenly and both the teeth and the bearing will get unnecessary wear. And now I'm adjusting the thrust bearing. We want that to be 16 thousandths of an inch, 0.016 inches. If you have feeler gauges, you can use feeler gauges. I don't know how else you would measure that. I should mention that all these adjustments are being made without the saw being plugged in. I have yet to plug the saw in at all. And it's a really good idea to follow the instructions too, step by step, because I've been taking things out of order. And not only do you need the blade tensioned, but you also need it centered on the wheel. And mine wasn't when I started making adjustments down there. So just slowly hand turn the upper wheel and make sure that the blade is tracking in the center of the tire. If it's not, you can make adjustments on the back with this hand knob. That looks like it's tracking now, and the blade is tensioned. Boy, that made a difference. Tensioning and then centering the blade. So now the blade's where it's supposed to be. Now we can adjust the blade guides. Okay, I think that looks good. Then we can tighten this thumb screw down. We can adjust this thrust bearing forward. And I've got a feeler gauge here. Got 6 thousandths and, can you see that? 10 thousandths. So the two together are 16 thousandths. And this is tricky. Bring that forward until it pushes the blade. And once we lock that in with that thumb screw, let's see if it held its position. That looks pretty good. And then we can adjust these two blade guides in and out by loosening this cap screw and then adjusting the guides, which are on a cam, so they'll move in and out with an Allen wrench put into this end. It's going to be easier to show you this at the top bearings. So we loosen this cap screw here to make it possible for these two to turn, and they'll turn in either direction on a cam. So this one is going to make it lean toward the blade, but if I go ahead and change the direction, it'll actually spin all the way down around back to the underside. Obviously we want both guides to be in the same plane, parallel to each other, not up and down like it was. We'll bring it into slight contact and then back it off just a little bit while I'm spinning the wheel above. There, just off contact there. And then this one, see, it's just kind of putsy, dialing it in until you get it just so. There. You shouldn't really be touching, or just like a dollar breadth. I don't have a dollar down here in the shop, but this feeler gauge is probably pretty close. So I want it just to barely move. Next step is to install the positive stop bolt. To do that, we loosen the trunnion knobs and tilt the table up and tighten that back down so it stays there. There's threaded holes here for this purpose. Not sure how far that needs to go in. And then bring the table back down. And then we put a square to the blade to make sure that the table is perfect 90 to the blade. And we just adjust this bolt until we get to 90. It looks pretty good. I'm gonna put a backlight on it just to make sure. Yep, I think that's it. And then we can tighten it down. And then once you're sure the table is perpendicular to the blade, take a look down here and see if your indicator is pointing at 0, which mine is not. So just take a Phillips screwdriver, loosen that pointer up a little bit, and get it pointed at your 0. Does it slide over? A little bit, but more of a tilt. And then lock that in. Now I gotta make sure the table is square to the blade. So I've got a straight edge on the back side of the blade. This is a 3/8 inch blade, and there's not a lot of real estate to get a straight edge to rest against it front to back. So this is a little bit of a wonky process, but just doing the best that I can. A wider blade would probably make this process a little bit easier, but changing blades is, as you may know, kind of a pain. And this 3/8 inch blade is probably the one that I'm going to be using a fair amount. Except if I'm resawing, then I'll be putting a 3/4 inch on. But anywho, so I'm lining up this straight edge front to back with the blade. And then I've got another fine ruler here. And on the back side, I've got 4 and 20 30-seconds. And on the front side, oops, just moved my ruler. Four and 20 on the front. 5 and 8 30-seconds. That's quite a difference. So that means we got to loosen up the table and spin it so that it is square to the blade. What a pain. To rotate the table, I've got to loosen all 6 of these trunnion nuts. And that's going to be a real pain because it's a tight squeeze, and there's 6 of them, 3 on each trunnion. Ugh, I'm not going to film that. I'm going to get frustrated. I can already tell. Now that we've got the blade and the blade guides in their proper positioning and the table is square and perpendicular to the blade, now we can install the fence system. Got to make sure that blade is tensioned though first. Just thread a nut onto the fence lock lever and then screw that onto the fence base. And then on this other side, then we add a washer to the fence lock lever, thread it through this side, and then add the mounting plate on the back here. And position that on the fence. And then to mount the fence, we lock this lever down. And just slide this T-channel over that guide bar. And then lock that into place. Or if you're cutting thin material, you can tip the fence on its face. Mount it in the same way over the T-channel. There we go. And we can get right up close to the blade. And then we want to make sure that the fence is lined up with our miter slots. I forgot to plug my microphone back into the camera, so this part doesn't have any audio. Otherwise, you would have heard me describing what I was doing. But basically, I used a fine ruler to measure the distance from the fence to the miter slot on both the front and the back of the table, and was off by about 1/16 of an inch. So I had to make yet another adjustment to the fence mounting thingy by loosening the 4 cap screws and then bumping the fence over so that it was parallel to the miter slot, and therefore to the blade. And then carefully tightening the screws back down without bumping it out of alignment. And that's it for adjustments. Now the saw is almost ready for cutting. One last step is connecting the dust collection. I've decided to modify my saw's dust collection, and I made a separate video covering just that. In doing my research on bandsaws on YouTube University, as I like to call it, I came across several videos with ideas on how to modify dust collection on a bandsaw. Most of them involve bringing the suction up closer to the table where the sawdust is created. Most bandsaws have a 4-inch dust port on the back of the saw near the lower wheel, as mine does here. Some saws have an additional 2 or 2.5-inch port up here closer to the table. My Grizzly doesn't have that. And I don't have a 4-inch dust collection system in my small shop. I have a 2-inch hose that's connected to a rolling cart, and that reaches every tool in my shop. So my solution is a vacuum hose attachment that I've modified and will mount just below the table where the saw blade comes through. And then that'll connect to my 2-inch hose. So let me show you how I made this. After cleaning the cast iron tabletop and before installing it onto the saw, I wanted to get a better dust collection set up. So you saw me putting the rare earth magnets in the vacuum hose attachment, and off camera I just made this MDF support that is angled to fit the side of the table, and we'll just hold this vacuum attachment in place at the side of the saw. I kind of put the cart before the horse on this dust collection setup because I didn't even have the table mounted to the saw when I started making this, but this vacuum attachment doesn't make it past the blade guides. So I'm gonna have to make a modification there. We got maybe no more than a half an inch of clearance above that thrust bearing. Let's call it 3/8 to be safe. So I'm gonna have to trim off some of this profile so it'll fit up in there. Wish me luck. Well, let's see if it fits now. We're really close. I think we're hitting the blade just a little bit with the plastic there, yeah. Okay, just a little more shaving and I think we'll be there. I bet you're curious about how my new dust collection works. That makes two of us. I haven't run any wood through this yet. So the saw is completely clean. So I'm gonna run a bunch of wood through it with the vacuum on and see how that worked. And then we'll turn the vacuum off, run some more wood through it, and see how much dust accumulates in and around the saw. Well, we made a little sawdust. Let's see what happened underneath. Really hard to get a good view of what's going on up in there. Got a bit down here. How about inside? Wow. Not much at all. Let's vacuum that out and do the same amount without the vacuum running. Okay, so I wasn't very scientific about this, but I cut roughly the same amount of passes. And there's quite a bit more dust on top of the table. It was especially flying up over here. I don't know if you could see that on the other angle. And then down here, there's quite a bit more too. Ooh, all over the side there. And all over that. Oh yeah. Yep, having the vacuum up by where the dust is created has made a tremendous difference. It'd be interesting to compare that to the 4-inch port. Vacuum versus no vacuum, definite difference. Well, I'm going to say my dust collection system is a success. I wish I had a way to test the difference between the 4-inch port and what I've got. But I don't have a 4-inch to 2-inch reducer, so I don't really have any way to hook it up to a vacuum. The setup that I have does work. Will it work for your saw? I don't know, maybe something similar. I will say that the rare earth magnets that I put on weren't really helpful in holding to the bottom of the table. I actually had to wedge a piece of wood in there to keep the vacuum hose up against the bottom of the table. The magnets weren't holding enough. So that's it for this Grizzly series. I hope you got something out of it. If you like this kind of content, let YouTube know by clicking the like button and sharing this video with people you know would get some use out of it. Until next time, my friends, be safe and love each other.